What's up everybody and welcome back to Murph Mathematics. Today I wanted to take some time to talk about a few study tips that have been super helpful for me for locking in new material and studying for exams. Of course, the best way to study is different for everybody, but I encourage you to try out some of these techniques if you have trouble with retaining information or just want to try changing things up. Let's get started. The first piece of advice I have is to learn how to take notes in a way that benefits you. A lot of students just copy down exactly what the teacher writes on the board, or exact textbook definitions. While this might help you for a short quiz the next day, ultimately the information isn't going to stick unless it's meaningful to you in some way. If you're a visual learner, you should try representing the information using a picture or a drawing. Or maybe you're a linguistic learner, and you engage with information best through words and speech. For this, I like to come up with funny phrases that relate to formulas I'm trying to memorize. For example, whenever I use the product rule, I think about a fig gif. Sure, it's not a perfect match, but it's funny enough to make sure I never forget it. Usually, the weirder the mnemonic device, the more likely you'll remember it. One of the most important parts of this process, though, is that you have to go back to your notes on a frequent basis to reinforce and consolidate the information. I would suggest reviewing your notes a day or two after it's taught to allow the material to sink in, but before you forget everything. Fig gif means nothing to me unless I keep going back to my notes and connecting it to derivative rules. Study tip number 2 is to ask good questions. And yeah, I get it. You don't know what to ask because how can you know what you don't know? The key here is to look at previous practice exercises and homework problems and ask yourself lots of how and why questions. How did I know to start the problem that way? Why did I use this method instead of another method? And be strict on yourself with the answer. Don't just settle with, oh, well, I got it the first time, so I can get it on the test. You should be able to clearly explain your process and reasoning to another person. And if you can't, find out where you struggled and get some help. It's better to do this with old problems you haven't done in a while. This way you really have to focus on the underlying process rather than relying on pure memorization. And here I move the coefficient in front of the derivative because it's a constant. Tip number 3. Make a list of key points to remember. This should be separate from your regular notes and used more for test prep rather than learning new material. The basic idea is to go through your notes, homework, and past exams and pull out the information that you think is most important or most challenging to remember. Consolidate this information into short, clear bullets or sentences and write them on a new piece of paper. I like this strategy because it helps prevent that frantic search through 24 pages of illegible notes the night before a test, and it gives you something to look at in the minutes before a test, while everyone else is freaking out and trying to decide whether they should cheat off the kid next to them or just fake a heart attack and take it next week. We all knew you were faking it, Kevin. You grabbed the wrong side of your chest. My next bit of advice is about learning how to effectively study in groups. Studying with other people can have a lot of benefits, but it can also be super unhelpful if you don't have a plan going in. It's important to remember that not only will everybody be coming in at a different level, but the way that everybody learns best will also be different. Trying to all study together in the same way would be like if the Avengers tried to defeat Thanos, but all of them just decided to run around and shoot fancy arrows. You want to make sure that each person has already spent a significant amount of time looking at the material on your own so that the group study time can be more used for asking questions like in tip number 2. It's also helpful to compare the way you do certain problems, and if any differences come up, try to figure out why. Don't just imitate another person's problem approach. First try to figure out what's going on, and then decide for yourself which method you're most comfortable with. Who knows, maybe you'll be like Captain America and realize that you're pretty good at swinging around a big hammer. The last thing I want to leave you with is pretty simple. Have a plan. Without a clear structure or organization to your study time, you'll end up spending too much time on the wrong stuff. It's like when I walk into the gym without a workout routine planned out ahead of time and end up on the stationary bike watching Guy Fieri eat fries for an hour. Maybe take 10 minutes each morning to look over your notes from the day before and make sure you're ready for today's class. Or if you're prepping for an exam, make a schedule the week before to decide what and when you're going to study each day. Dedicating a specific time to studying will increase your focus as well as reduce stress and anxiety. Well, that is all I have for you today. Hopefully you got something useful out of this video. If there's any study tips I haven't mentioned, feel free to put them in the comments below for others to see. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and tell your friends about Murph Mathematics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.